Today on the 1012 podcast, our first big show of the season. Absolutely loaded episode, and I cannot wait for you to check out our new format. Joining us today is Andy Mitch, Joe Goodman, and Kelley Ford to recap Week 0 in the Big 12, including Farmogeddon and Kansas' win over Fresno State. Then Chase A Kiddy has his teams. He is high and low on entering the season and some early Week 1 lines, plus we preview the Week 1 slate and make sure you know all the games you need to keep an eye out for coming up on the 1012 Big Show.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at USAA.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
Icy Hot Pro with 2 max strength pain relievers. Targets multiple pain receptors. Ice works fast. Heat makes it last.
Welcome to the 1012 podcast, the Big Show, episode 1. I told you, if you listened to our first episode in regards to our picks earlier last week with our good friend Chase A Kiddy, that we're changing things up on the 1012 this year, and I am very, very excited about it. I'm so excited to debut our new 1012 format. This is what you're going to get every single Monday. Is myself, Phillip Slavin, host here of the 1012 podcast, flagship show of the 1012 Network, part of the 1012 Network, where you can find every show at 1012network.com, TEN12, the word network. Of course, the show is partners with Sports Social, Europe's biggest sports podcast network. I will be here every Monday, as I always am, but we're changing the format. As opposed to having Andy and Jamie here with me every week, we're going to mix things up a little bit. The show's going to have 4 segments moving forward. We'll start the show off with a rotation of guests, a collection of people who, you'll hear some familiarity each week off the top. Then we'll be joined by a reporter who will cover one team in particular, so we can talk about one team or one game. Not this week. Then Chase A Kiddy, who joins me every midweek for picks, is going to come on to talk about which teams are on the rise and on the drop as far as trends. And then we'll wrap the show up with a little solo of just me looking into the week ahead. Since this is our first show and it's not even really a recap of Week 1 yet, because Week 1 hasn't happened. We just got Week 0 and we got 2 Big 12 games. I'm going to have on a couple extra guests than we probably will each week here off the top of the show, because I want to take a minute to make sure that we can introduce everybody. Now, 2 of our guests you'll probably meet next week on their first appearance. One was unavailable because she is recording her podcast. That's Melissa Treebwasser. If you do not know her, she hosts a TCU podcast that is absolutely incredible. And since we don't have one of those, you should go and check it out. Also is our good friend Scott McFarland of Bosco's Boys, who is still on his way home from Ireland, if he's actually left the country yet. Not entirely sure, time zones and all of that. So we'll get them to hop on next week. But joining me today, if you've listened to this show before, you know this man because he's on all the time. He is the host of the Rock Chalk podcast, the Kansas representative here in the 1012 Network. He is my good friend, Andy Mitz.
Good to be back. Glad we're starting another season of Big 12 football.
Thrilled to have you. Andy, your volume's a little bit low. Also on our rotation of people who are going to come on and cover this show, he is one half of the Bear Den podcast. No offense to his better half, Matt, but I feel like the better looking one, maybe. He may have something to say about that. But he is the always funny, always enjoyable Joe Goodman.
Thank you very much. No, I agree with everything you say. He is the better half. I am the better looking half. But let's talk some football. I'm excited. We're finally back.
We all have our role to play. And last but far from least, look, every time he comes on the show, we do numbers. So how could I not put him on the rotation? He doesn't cover the Big 12 exclusively, but I think he is near and dear to Big 12 fans' hearts. Maybe not West Virginia, but everybody else loves him. He is the man behind KFordRatings. He is Kelley Ford. Kelley, welcome, sir.
Hey, Phillip, thanks for having me as always. I love coming on. I love talking Big 12 with you. And since you brought up West Virginia, yes, they were in my preseason realistic expectations, Big 12 projected standings. They were last. West Virginia has not even played a game yet. But as you're going to see in the Week 1 update, West Virginia is out of the basement. They're number 15 out of 16 now. So West Virginia fans, you haven't even played a game, and I'm already starting to get on your bandwagon. How about that, Phillip?
I mean, I don't. That's just think about what happens when they actually play a game. Like the ceiling, the floor's been raised.
You're telling me Kansas State dropped that far?
Oh, that's a good that's a good tease right there. I'm not going to commit to that at this point, but all I can tell you is West Virginia is out of the basement spot.
Bravo. Okay, so let's start our first segment here of the show, and we're going to start it off by talking about that game that the Joe just teased. Of course, Farmogeddon. An absolutely incredible start to the college football season. The first game of the 2025 season played in Ireland. I love that this is becoming an annual tradition. We got a Big 12 ranked matchup, a rivalry game overseas. The fans delivered, and it was everything you would want from a college football game. There was bad weather. There was weird occurrences. The paint on the field was literally washing away and waning away. The audio didn't quite sync up before the game. Everything that could go wrong in the first half and pregame basically did. I don't know how you could start a college football season better off than that. And then we got an incredible second half. The rivalry delivered. We come away with Iowa State winning their third straight Farmogeddon, 5 of their last 6. Maybe that'll convince Jamie Pollard to make this an annual rivalry game. We'll talk about that more coming up. I have to read the drive chart of the first half of this game because it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Muffed punt, fumble, punt, touchdown, fumble, turnover on downs, punt, fumble, missed field goal, punt, knee. That's actually the whole game. How can you not? Oh, that's just the first half. How can you not love that? How that is college football at its finest, folks. Joe, we'll start with you. What's your general takeaway from Farmogeddon?
It was basically the most Farmogeddon that you could possibly Farmogeddon. It was like going to like a Friday night double feature at your local high school where it's the JV that plays first and then the varsity plays second, and so that was just the tale of two halves there. But no, that was a blast of a game in every way possible, from sickos to just like all time classic level stuff. We got treated to, and because it's a rivalry, there were absolutely some meltdowns on social media afterwards, which makes it even better. There's chatter between the Big 12 and the commissioners. There's all kinds of stuff around this. So it was the perfect start to a Big 12 season in every way possible.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for headlines, right, like this, or attention and all the stuff to happen around the game and not just the game, this was the perfect one to send over to Ireland. To have, somewhere completely different, to potentially have controversy of one of the teams having to give up a home game for this. Like, this was the one to do if you want to showcase and get as weird of a result as you possibly can. And so I thought it was an absolutely fantastic decision to send them over there. And I thought the game played out kind of the way that you would expect it, with the torrential downpour that they had in the first half that really just kind of messed everything up for both teams, and then both of them getting calmed down and really playing fairly well, I think, in the second half. Obviously being a Kansas guy, I'm not necessarily too heartbroken about Iowa State coming out on top, but I also think that this is, a good representation of what the Big 12 is going to bring this year. There's going to be a lot of chaos, but there's also going to be a lot of really good football.
Kelley?
Yeah, I would just add, I agree with a lot of those comments that were made. For me, as I look at this game and the outcome of it from a analytical perspective, right? That's kind of the focus and the lens that I choose to view college football through, at least to give us a starting point of conversation. The games have now started, which is great. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Iowa State. In fact, Iowa State now, when you think about how compressed the projected Big 12 standings are. I mentioned West Virginia's out of the basement. Iowa State's all the way up to number 1 for me. I mean, they gained 0.8 of a conference win in terms of their projection from last week to this week. Yes, they were a slight underdog in my model coming into this game. So, of course, you're going to pick up some. But then the improvement to their power rating compounds that and makes them now, for me, when you're 1-0 in a conference that's this close and nobody else has a win yet, they are projected number one in my projected Big 12 standings right now, a 33% chance to win at least 7 games, which I think that's the threshold you need to be in at least a tie for second in a spot in Arlington. So I don't want to take anything away from Iowa State, but as you look at this game, from the predictive analytics standpoint, it might suggest that Kansas State maybe should have won. And that drives people crazy. They don't like hearing that. And that's the reality. Hey, Iowa State won. They get the credit. They're going to be ranked number one in my most deserving rankings this week out of the 9 FBS teams that played a game. They're going to be number one. Kansas State falls. They're now to number 6 in my projected Big 12 standings. Both of these teams' defenses were upgraded by my model this week. Both of these teams' offenses were downgraded by my model this week. Iowa State picks up about a point in the power ratings. Kansas State falls by about a similar margin. So I still think Kansas State's a good team. I still have them among the quote-unquote best in the Big 12 in terms of their talent and their outlook from a predictive standpoint. But Iowa State, right now, credit to them, 1-0, and currently 5.9 projected wins in conference. That's number 1 in the Big 12 for me.
I love that you brought up the point on you think Kansas State should have won. And everybody hates that stuff. But we have to be able to analyze things from the standpoint of Iowa State won this game, and we're not taking anything away from them. I think Rocco Becht was the better quarterback. He answered a lot of questions for me in a game where I didn't think that his pass catchers really delivered in this game. But when you look at the numbers, Kansas State outgained Iowa State by 70 yards. They averaged 4.1 yards per rush, while Iowa State averaged just 2.8. And so much of that came in the fourth quarter. Both teams had 2 turnovers. Here's the thing. Look, Kansas State, 6 penalties for 48 yards. Iowa State, 1 penalty for 5 yards. Okay, well, that's not great. It was 4th downs. Iowa State went 3 for 3 on 4th downs. Kansas State went 1 for 4. 3 turnovers on downs. Kansas State had opportunities in this game to win this game. But whatever it is, Kansas State just struggles in this game. They struggled in this one. I know it was but it was a sloppy start for both teams at front end. Neither offensive line was especially impressive in this game at all. I think Iowa State started to play a little bit better as the game progressed. Kansas State didn't quite get there. I think that Iowa State won this game, but I think it's perfectly reasonable to sit here and say Kansas State had plenty of opportunities to go ahead and win this game outright and could not get it done, especially on 4th downs. And I think some of the Kansas State fans' criticism of those 4th down decisions and calls is very valid as we sit here on Sunday night and have this conversation.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. 2 of those 4th down calls, you're talking about one on their own side of the field and another in chip shot field goal range. I mean, you add those 3 points, there's no telling how that changes the trajectory of every other decision both teams make throughout this game with those 3 points added.
Yeah, not only that, but I mean, coming into this game, you knew that nobody was going to win or lose the Big 12 in this particular game, right? Like, this was potentially going to be a game that could set the tone for what they needed to do or kind of help set expectations. But the fact that it's the very first game of the season, we talk all the time about how teams change over the course of the season, and especially Kansas State and Iowa State. Like, they both have a big history, right, of just not necessarily or being significantly different teams at the end of the year than they were at the beginning of the year. So, I don't think that anybody should think that either of these teams, regardless of who is going to win or lose, has a hugely better or hugely worse chance of getting themselves into the college football playoff, of winning the conference. It's just way too early for any of that. And you saw rust, right? Like, this is the first game all these guys, like, if this was beginning of conference play in like week 4 or 5, I think you could read a lot more into what it was. But week 0 with absolutely no history of a lot of the main pieces of these teams working together and having to like juggle all the new environments and just everything that goes into this game as well. It's not the best barometer for who is going to be the best team at the end of the season.
You have a game in week 0. You're the first game of the season. So everything feels worse when you're the very first game of the college football season and you suffer a loss. They got to Ireland on Thursday. You have crummy weather conditions. You're playing on a field that's not an American football field. Like, look, guys, it's just I get it for Kansas State fans. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done for them moving forward, but the only big thing that I feel like I've changed my opinion on about either of these teams is that I feel a lot more confident about Rocco Beck now than I did coming into the season, and whether or not he was going to be able to deliver without 2 NFL wide receivers out there to catch passes for him. I thought he looked impressive. That's my biggest takeaway from this game as far as looking forward. Kansas State offensive line, you just kind of expect them to be good. Like, I think they have some questions to try and answer because it's the first time I've seen an offensive line for Kansas State that left me with questions since Coach Kleiman arrived. But it's game 1. I get it. There's so many reasons why, if you're Kansas State fans, like, your entire world is melting down after this loss because it's Iowa State's 3rd time in a row, rivalry game. A lot of football to be played. I know nobody likes that answer. A lot of football to be played for Kansas State. And for Iowa State, you are feeling just incredible. Just absolutely incredible. Shout out to both fan bases on Twitter because you're both incredible and so much fun. Blue sky. The jokes were flying. Absolutely love it. We're not going to talk about the fight that we all are aware of. But we are going to talk about, though, before this game kicked off, obviously press appearance, Brett Yormark sitting out for a press appearance with both Jamie Pollard and Gene Taylor, Iowa State and Kansas State's athletic directors. Tim Fitzgerald of Go Power Cat happened to ask a question about this rivalry because it will not be played in 2027, which is insane, and about if there's anything the Big 12 could do or should look to do maybe to fix that moving forward.
It's been a great rivalry, and I agree with you. Rivalries matter, and the TV partners like those rivalries, but most importantly, the fans do. So I will defer, to the gentleman to my right and left to determine what those rivalries look like moving forward. But certainly, this is a classic, and I'm looking forward to today's game.
Well, the Big 12 schedule.
That's a very important and interesting quote that we've got to talk about because this is a rivalry. This is the longest active rivalry in the Big 12. And it will not be played in 2027 because it was not a protected rivalry. At the time when all the schedule matrix was released, we were told they were just going to do in-state rivalries. And the Big 12 took a lot of flack for it. And then this question gets asked, and you notice how Yormark's response deflected to the man on his right and the man on his left. The man on his right was Jamie Pollard, Iowa State athletic director. The man on his left is Kansas State athletic director Gene Taylor. Now, I'm going to follow this up for all three of you with another tweet from Ben Hutchinson, who was provided that audio on Twitter. That both athletic directors basically got to leave a comment, and to sum their comments up about this, I'm going to quote Ben's tweet here. Kansas State athletic director Gene Taylor says, "There's a way to figure out how to make it a protected rivalry." Iowa State athletic director Jamie Pollard says, "It's not just a decision between the Cyclones and Wildcats." I think you can kind of figure some things out based off what has been said here. And I'm going to let you guys talk. I'm going to leave this as my last point. Conference commissioners are not God. They do not decide everything. They are employed by the school presidents and athletic directors. They operate on their good graces. They don't get to just do whatever they want, and the ADs and school presidents say, "Okay, cool, that's great, thanks." I know that's what people think because of how Greg Sankey operates. That's not the reality. So, Andy, your takeaway from Yormark's quotes and then the subsequent quotes from both Gene Taylor and Jamie Pollard. Andy, we can't hear you. So while you figure out what's wrong with your mic, Kelley.
Yeah, so it's interesting comments, Phillip, and I'm in a situation because I work in a Division I conference office. Now, the conference office in which I work, we do not sponsor football, so I can speak a little bit more freely about the sport of football. But with regard to how intercollegiate athletics administration works, to your point, I am intimately familiar, going on 8 years in my conference office. So I don't want to take those comments and say anyone's pointing a finger at anyone else, but it does feel like there's blame being deflected. And at the end of the day, what I really want to see our leaders in college athletics, and particularly in college football, is do what's in the best interest of college football. And I get it. Yormark's job is to do what's in the best interest of the Big 12 conference. Each of these athletic directors, their job is to do what's in the best interest of their institution and their athletic department. So everyone has their own kind of focus that they have, and that's their priority and what they're being tasked to do on a day-to-day basis. But we all collectively also have a responsibility to do what's best for the sport and for the enterprise of college athletics as a whole. And for me, and now this is a personal opinion, I think many people agree with it, but this is not, written in stone. But to me, the foundation of college football, the thing that has made this sport my favorite for my whole life, and in my opinion, the best in the last 150 years that it's been in existence, is really three things. One is regionality. College football has always been, up until a couple of years ago, a very regional sport. Two is rivalries. The rivalries are the lifeblood of this sport. And when you play rivalries, it's good for everybody. It's good for the two fan bases involved in the game. And it's good for the neutral viewer who just loves watching high quality, high stakes college football. And the third, one that we can't necessarily control, is upsets. We know we're going to get them. We don't know where they're going to come. And that's part of the excitement. But regionality, in my opinion, has largely been lost in recent years. So there goes one foundational block. I talked about upsets are what they are. We're going to get them and it's going to be great. But we need to do everything we can to hold on to the rivalries that still exist. And yes, some conference realignment has brought rivalries back. You think about Texas and Texas A&M. But there is no reason that a rivalry that's been going on for 100 plus years in Farmogeddon, Iowa State and Kansas State, cannot and should not continue. I don't really care who's making the final call, whether it's the AD at Iowa State, the AD at Kansas State, or the conference office. We need to get our acts together, and this is a game that needs to be played every single year. It's really as simple as that for me, Phillip.
I'm ready to run through a wall for you now, Kelley. Ready to go. You nailed it. Like that's the heart and soul of this sport. Like that pseudo hatred and sometimes moving into actual hatred that you have for no other reason than a simple color or a simple place where a building is located that football team plays in. I drafted for a college fantasy team earlier tonight, and Josh Hoover was sitting right there for me. This is going to be a great pick, right? And I was like, it was the most painful thing I ever did, hitting that little plus sign to add him to my team. Because I know he's going to have a ton of yards this year. I have all the faith in the world, but like I still feel dirty for drafting him because I'm a Baylor fan. And that's what makes this sport great and keeps us coming back every single time. And every time these things start to slip through the cracks or go away, or, oh, we're not going to play that anymore, or maybe we'll play it 2 or 3 years down the road, or one athletic director saying like, oh, well, my phone, he can call me if he wants this to happen. And people just being childish sometimes about this stuff. It ruins the sport, or not necessarily ruins it, but it waters it down and it makes it something different than what has made it beautiful for a really long time. Also, Phillip, I have to actually you because you said it was the oldest current rivalry in the Big 12. Like, based on what? It's not older than Baylor and TCU and has not been played as many times as Baylor and TCU.
Did Baylor and TCU take a break, though?
Oh, are you saying
maybe
so it's never stopped being played?
Concurrently played, correct. No breaks.
Okay.
My apologies. Thank you for the clarification. No breaks.
That makes this even more of a travesty.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, but to your guys' point, right? Like it's different when a team leaves a conference or they're no longer in the same conference. I can understand potentially making a decision that's more in the interest of your school.
Yeah.
But they're in the same conference. They're trying to find ways. Like, the entire point of being in a conference is to collectively find ways to benefit all of your schools. Right. And you don't do that by getting rid of one of the best rivalries that is in that conference. Depending on how you want to look at it, I mean, you could argue it's one of the most heated because of the two fan bases that are there. It's been one of the most competitive recently. Not even necessarily by the actual record, but the fact that all the games have been really close, all of them have been really entertaining, and the TV numbers have done really well. This is, as far as I can tell, there is no downside to playing this unless you are one of the schools that's decided we don't like playing it. And I think we all know who that was, or who that usually is in these sorts of cases when Iowa State's involved. So, look, I feel like this is something that should have, this is the perfect opportunity for you to say, this is good for the conference. It may not be ideal for us. It may not be exactly what we want, but it's not bad for us. And so, this is where you say, I will take a tiny hit on my perfect ideal situation to help the conference as a whole, to give our fans something that they're really excited about, and to do what it is that we need to do to help support the Big 12 and put out the best product they absolutely can. That should be the priority, not, I feel like this isn't the greatest thing ever for my team or for my school, and so I'm going to selfishly nix it and say that we can't have this as a protected rivalry. Because let's be honest, protected rivalries in a conference schedule do not happen unless both schools want it. So
can anybody explain to me? Can anybody explain to me the down, not pointing a finger anywhere, but anyone involved, why they would find this to be a negative? That's what I can't wrap my head around, is who comes out on top of them not playing this? What's that reason?
The only thing I can think, Joe, and this is what I call a loser mentality. It's not a slight at anybody. It's a generalization, but I call it a loser mentality. When you approach a situation, and from a competitive standpoint, it's a difficult task for you. So if I'm Kansas State and Iowa State is always at or near the top of the Big 12 standings, they could say, ooh, I don't want to play them every year because in this new look Big 12, they're going to be among the favorites every year. Or vice versa. Iowa State can say, oof, in this new look Big 12, Kansas State, they're always going to be at the top. And that's going to hurt me in the conference standings. To me, and I don't know if anybody is saying that. That's the only thing I can think, though, for the reasons that we've outlined here about how this rivalry has been so great for so long. And some people will say, Kelley, no, it hasn't. And what are you talking about? Because these teams haven't been very good for very long, and they've been terrible for decades at a time. Okay, show me where in the term rivalry, or the definition of rivalry, I should say, the quality of the team or the record of the teams involved matters. It doesn't matter. They're your rivals. You don't like each other, and you play every year. That's what builds this thing up. I don't care if one team's 0-12 and the other's 1-11. That one win that they got against their rival is massive, and it makes the season worth it. So that's the only thing, Joe, I can think. And again, I'm an outsider here. I'm not a Big 12. I didn't go to a Big 12 school. I don't have a number one Big 12 team that I root for. But for me, I see it a lot just in college athletics as a whole. A loser mentality of that team's going to be pretty good. I don't want to play them. That's all I can think of.
Kelley Ford bringing the heat, as we would expect here on the show.
Yeah, that would just be the loss of that. In my opinion, if anybody ever does that, let's just flip this on a head and think Michigan, Ohio State, which in my opinion is the quintessential rivalry, maybe in American sports, right? And if there was a day where Ohio State said, Michigan is too good every year, we don't want to have to play the game, then you've lost the rivalry. It's at that point, it's done.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
100%.
Last thought, had Ryan Nani on the show from Shutdown Fullcast a week or so ago and talked about where Farmogeddon fit on the national scale, and hit me up on Blue Sky and said I was wrong about Farmogeddon. All right, we're going to hit a break, and we will be right back. Hey, everyone, make sure that you stop into the show notes here in the Ten12 podcast so that you can find the link to our group on Battle Bets. What is Battle Bets? I will tell you. Battle Bets is a fake money betting league. No real cash, no risk. Each week, you're going to place bets on games, track them live, and climb the leaderboard. And at the end of the season, if you're in the 1012 Picks Pod Fans League, we're going to have a prize for you. In fact, we're going to have weekly prizes if you have the best week in our new Battle Bets 1012 Picks Pod Fans League. So in the show notes, you're going to find a direct link You're going to download the app. You're going to start making your picks. It's every Power 4 team every single week. You're going to want to check it out. I am excited about this because, look, we talk about gambling, we talk about betting, and we talk about these kinds of things, and I get it if you're someone who doesn't want to put real money in it. I put $20 into my little Bet Saracen, not a sponsor, account every year, and that's it. But the opportunity to play with fake money and really have some fun with this stuff, I am excited to do it. I'm excited to have as many of you who want to join our league. So if you want to download the BattleBets app, and when you do, say, hey, 1012 is who told me to check this out, we'd appreciate it. Otherwise, come join our league. We'll have the link in the show notes. We're going to have the link on our social media accounts. Come and play. Fake money, real fun, real prizes for you this season on BattleBets.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. Becoming the most valuable sports franchise in the world doesn't happen without risk. A man who's willing to bet it all, and the players ready to make their own luck. America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, is the story of the 1990s Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones's impact on NFL history. Featuring interviews with iconic 90s players and more. Watch America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, streaming now only on Netflix.
All right, we're back. Normally we would have a guest to cover one team in particular, but since this is the first weekend of our first day of this, or whatever, it's not week one yet. We had two teams, and I have three great guests, and I want to give them a little more time here with me today because we're going to talk about the other Big 12 game. Of course, Kansas opening the season with a nice romping of Fresno State. Really impressed by Daniel Hishaw and his performance in this game. Kansas offensive line. Jalen Daniels running for his life. Scheduled tweet. Andy, as our resident Kansas fan and host of the Rock Chalk podcast, kind of your just quick general takeaway from Kansas's season opening week 0 victory.
Yeah, I mean, it was, typical taking some time to get the outside of the offensive line to be, where it needs to be. But the interior line, I thought, did a really good job. But this was, I think we answered most of the questions that you really, were worried about the Kansas Jayhawks coming into the year. Jalen Daniels looked good. He was able to find receivers that he hadn't been working with for, 3 or 4 years already, and make them look like they were top tier receivers that they deserve to be on a Big 12 field. But I was the most impressed, I think, with the way that the defense played. Yes, they gave up a really big drive to start the game, but then settled in and really shut down Fresno State the rest of the day. Look, I want to see them do it against a much better team, and I think when we see them play Missouri, we'll get a much better idea of what this team is going to be like, going into Big 12 conference play and doing all of, the other things like later in the year. But I don't know that you could have asked for a whole lot more. The defensive secondary got burned a couple times, but for the most part, they were able to read coverages and do a lot of what they needed to do. And it's hard to be anything but optimistic. This is a much better team than Kansas normally plays in their openers. And I think that they played a lot better than we normally see them play in their openers the last few years as well. So I also think that a lot of people underestimated, myself included, just how much a difference it made to be playing in Children's Mercy Park last year and Arrowhead. Being at home in the booth gave them a huge boost, and I think gave them a good opportunity to reestablish the home court or the home field advantage that they've had the few prior years before that under Lance Leipold. So I do agree that I think Hishaw is going to be able to pick up a lot of what Devin Neal did, but he's obviously not going to be nearly as dynamic as Devin Neal was. But I just think that Jalen Daniels has kind of picked up the slack as well and really kind of put them in a good position to be a good team in the Big 12 this year. Obviously, there's still a lot of questions to be answered about how good they can be.
Love the new stadium. I think you're valid. Your points are valid. It's hard to have a real takeaway from Kansas against a Fresno State team that's probably not going to be very good. But look, considering how they started the first half of last season, playing teams that were good to bad to whatever and struggling because Jalen Daniels was throwing interceptions because he wasn't meshing with the offensive coordinator. It is good to see the offense clicking against a college football team that is at the FBS level. So I will, for Kansas's standpoint, after one game, that was what I wanted to see, to feel like Kansas can actually have a bounce back in what we expect to be Jalen Daniels last season. Kelley, what were your thoughts on Kansas's win?
Yeah, a few thoughts. One, I agree with both of you. New stadium, or the upgraded stadium, looks great. Love the end zones. It did feel like a home field advantage, and that's what we want in college football. That's what we love. Second, most, and I know this from doing all of my summer work in terms of returning production and really getting a handle on rosters and who's landed where. Jalen Daniels, of course, has not landed anywhere different, but most of our COVID players have cycled out of the college football ecosystem. Jalen Daniels is still here, and he's someone who, if you're going to have a holdover, he's a good one to have. I mean, he was exciting in this game, and it's been a couple years since we've seen that level of excitement. It's certainly not his fault, entirely. Gets hurt in the 23 season, I guess it was. So, but if he can recapture some of that magic, if he can stay healthy this year, Kansas is a team to look out for. And they did jump in my projected Big 12 standings. Yes, this was not a Big 12 game. They jumped, though, in my projected Big 12 standings from 5th to 4th. So that is a positive move for Kansas here after week one. I had them with an 89% win expectancy in this game against Fresno State, and they dominated. I mean, there was no doubt from the jump Kansas was going to win this football game. So, they're upgraded in all three phases, offense, defense, and special teams in my model this week. They moved up about a point overall in the totality of the model, which is pretty good, for a week 0 game against an opponent that you were expected to beat. So I'm encouraged by what I saw from Kansas. And if Daniels can stay healthy and can return to form of what would have been the 22 season, 22 season, maybe 23 season, if he can return to form, they're going to be a player in this very, very tight Big 12 race. So exciting times for the Kansas Jayhawks. It's got to feel terrible for Kansas State fans. You lose, and Andy doesn't care. You lose your rivalry game, and then your other big rival goes out and gets a nice looking win. Looks impressive in the win. Tough in Manhattan, but Lawrence has got to be feeling good.
Joe, I want to move to our next topic, then we can it's a perfect segue. Talking about Kansas is one of the 7 Big 12 teams who didn't make a bowl game last year, finishing with a sub 500 record. Kansas was joined by Cincinnati, Utah, Houston, Arizona, UCF, and Oklahoma State. Of those 7 teams, Kansas starting off the year nice with a win, feeling good. Of those 7 teams, if you had to pick one that you would put money down on, or make a battle bet that is going to bounce back and have at least a bowl trip this season, who would you pick?
It's 100% Kansas. If nothing else other than I think they underperformed last season. They had extenuating circumstances around their team, with both Kelley and Andy have brought up with their lack of a actual home field last season. That I personally believe a lot of those extenuating circumstance things weigh more on human beings than we give them credit for in sports. And then you look at Kansas's schedule this year, right? They've got one win. So boom, you've got one. You just got to find 5 more to make a bowl game. They play Wagner, then they go on the road to Mizzou. Okay, road game in the SEC. That's not the most ideal situation in the world. But then you look at their next 3. You've got West Virginia, Cincinnati, and at UCF. Those are all 3 teams that very, very beatable, and will not surprise me in the least if Kansas is favored to win all 3 of those. You go on the road to Texas Tech. That's a tough game. Kansas State at home. That's a tough game. But then you've got Oklahoma State, and you've got at Arizona. That right there is 7 wins. If you just win the games that I think that a team like this is supposed to win, you've got 7 right there. So bam, Kansas is the easy answer for me.
Kelley, same question.
I also think
go ahead, Andy.
one thing I would say, just to kind of build on that, one of the things that they talked about, Jalen Daniels doing last year that really hurt him, especially early in the year, he felt the pressure of trying to have to get his receivers to the NFL, having to put them in situations where they could showcase what they can do. He was pressing quite a bit. You don't see that because none of these guys are at the point yet where it's like, hey, I've got to, I need to showcase what they can do. And, this entire team has been playing where it needs to be. I think everyone else has, in terms of all those other teams you talked about, have a case to be made. But I also think that it's like Joe said, a very clear cut. If you're looking for a team that has the most room to improve, was probably the closest to actually going to a bowl game last year of any of them, that didn't. It is the Jayhawks, and the fact that there's all these other things going for them makes it really hard to pick anyone else if you only get one.
Yeah, Phillip, I'm going to agree with the group here. I'm going to give you some more, though. Not on Kansas. 93% chance to go bowling after this 1-0 start. You feel really good about it. But I think there's a couple more. I mean, Utah's got a 90% chance to win at least 6 games by my numbers. Cincinnati and UCF both at 66% chance. So a 2 out of 3 chance that each of them make it and go bowling. Now, Houston, it's a little dicier, 52%. I mean, 50-50, you're going to have to win some close games and maybe get some bounces of the ball your way. Oklahoma State and Arizona both have a 38% chance to go bowling as things stand for me right now. So better than 1 out of 3. I mean, I think you're looking at perhaps even the majority of that group that should feel good about their chances to go bowling this year. But if you got to pick one, it's Kansas for the reasons outlined by the guys.
I love the Kansas pick by everybody. My pick would be Utah. Yeah, I don't think I think Utah fans were a year early, not necessarily wrong. Especially if Devin Dampier works out and the offensive coordinator hire works out the way we think it will. So we will keep an eye on that, fellas.
I just
go
think
ahead.
their schedules. I think their schedule's a little tough.
I will still take issue with Utah fans saying that they're going to come in and run the Big 12.
I know.
I don't think that anyone in this conference is in a position to dominate this conference moving forward.
They just missed a preposition in there. They meant to say they're consistently wanting to run from the Big 12.
You guys have been awesome. It's a great way to start the new big show here for the 1012 podcast. Andy, Kelley, Joe, fantastic work as always. Look forward to having all three of you here on the show throughout the season in the rotation. I'm so excited to get to talk with all three of you on a more regular basis. For everybody out there, Andy Mitz, again, host of the Rock Chalk podcast. Go check it out for your Kansas coverage. Joe Goodman, one half of the Bear Den podcast, our Baylor show here in the 1012 network. And of course, if you don't know who KFordRatings is, this must be your first time on social media or listening to this podcast, because I can't imagine how that's a thing. But if you don't yet, KFordRatings.com is where you're going to find his work. Fellas, we'll talk to you again soon.
You're tuned into Auto Intelligence, live from Auto Trader, where data, tools, and your preferences sync to make your car shopping smooth.
They're searching inventory.
Oh, yeah.
They find what you need.
They're gonna find it.
You can make a budget for your wallet to help you succeed. Pricing's precise and true.
So true.
It's smarter car shopping.
Ooh.
Just for you.
Oh, it's just for you.
Ooh.
Find your next ride at autotrader.com. Powered by Auto Intelligence.
All right, segment 3 here on the show. Very excited to have our pro bettor, the Bet MGM maestro. I'm going to come up with more good titles. The father of twins now, Chase A Kiddy. Chase, welcome back, bud.
Thank you, maestro. I'm not musically very talented, so I'd hate to mislead people.
I'm trying to find a word that fits with BetMGM, and it feels like it has to start with a B or an M. I don't know why. Those are the two. Maybe a G would work too. I'll figure it out. I'll keep We'll workshop these things. Chase, week 0 in the books. You of course will join me on the midweek show to recap our picks. So if you want to hear those, join us then. That should come out on Wednesday this week, just because we've got 3 games on Thursday, actually 4 games on Thursday. A couple of which we are going to make picks for. So we want to make sure we get that dropped early. We will have a guest for week 1's picks. Chase, we do have 2 Big 12 games in the books now. Kansas State dropping their opener in the Farmogeddon rivalry over in Ireland against Iowa State. Kansas putting on an impressive showing against a Fresno State team we don't have a lot of information about. But did anything in what we saw in week 0 change your opinions on Iowa State, Kansas State, or Kansas moving forward?
Probably Kansas. I just think it's very affirming to see it look good again. It's when you see them in the new stadium and the offense looks good and Jalen Daniels is 18 for 20, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and it just looks crisp. I don't know how good that Fresno State team is. They have like 1.25 yards per rush. I mean, I don't know what that is, but even if it's, Domino's Pizza delivery boys out there, to see Kansas look crisp again, it does sort of put it in front of your eyeballs. Like, okay, when it looks right, this is what it looks like. They can be somebody again this year. Last year was weird. Flush it. They can be sort of an upper tier, flirt with contention kind of team this year. I think Iowa State, Kansas State, you basically got what you got. Those were two good defenses playing a week 0 international game in the rain. So that's about what I thought it was going to look like. You got the Avery Johnson experience. You got a couple plays that were sick. You had 4 or 5 that were like, oh, dude, what? Come on, man. And that game, I don't want to overread it because it really comes down to 2 4th down calls. And Kleiman makes what I think is the wrong one. There were other factors in that. There was some discussion on the broadcast about the spot, but ultimately he made a decision I would not have made because of their field position. Matt Campbell, I think, makes the correct 4th down call because of what their field position was and what the game scenario was and how much time was left on the clock. So I really think that the game came down to a couple of plays late, and that's what you get when it's a nip-tuck 3-point affair between two rival teams in week 0. So, I thought Iowa State was going to win, and they did, but I wouldn't overread too much out of that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair takeaways. I think I feel similarly. I feel a lot better about Iowa State. I feel a lot better about Kansas as a team. I have a lot of questions about offensive lines for Iowa State and Kansas State. I feel a lot better about Rocco Becht than I did entering the season in his performance for Iowa State in that game. But I'm not going to overreact to a 3-point win that could have gone either way, had some 4th down attempts converted for Kansas State. Right. So it's hard to have a lot of takeaway from that one as far as like grand expectations moving forward. Now, this is kind of like a week 1 preview for us to some extent. We've done a lot of college football season previewing these past few weeks. So I do want to ask you, normally in this segment moving forward, we'll kind of do stock up, stack down based off of our reactions to the week's prior games. Kind of did that here to kick things off. But I do want your thoughts on the rest of the Big 12 moving forward. Who are the teams that you feel the highest on and the lowest on as we get ready to really get this season going on Thursday?
Highest, I'm still very high on Arizona State. I just think we talked about this in previous episodes, but I just think the general public consciousness sees them as a team that was a little bit fluky last year because of how they were picked, because of how late everybody was to sort of buy into that, and how good they were at the end. It really feels like people are reluctant to give them credit coming into this season. I just think that's wrong. I think given what they bring back, which is basically the entire team, minus Scattaboo, I think they're going to be really good again. So I'm very high on them. I was kind of playing with this idea too for tonight for like who I'm high or low on relative to expectation or maybe relative to others. So I think Arizona State is a fine answer to that. We talked, the other answer I think here is Houston. Like I think relative to where they are picked or how they are thought of, I think this is going to be probably one of the better coached teams in the conference. And I think they're going to be really dangerous in some key spots. So I think those are the answer there. UCF, I don't want to belabor the point and I don't want to be mean. I think there's a chance this is maybe the worst power team in college football this year. And you and I just watched Stanford lose to Hawaii. So that's not great. And I don't think right now, week 1, plenty of time to be wrong about everything, plenty of time to say I was wrong, plenty of time to change my mind and react to things that happen in the next 3 months. But right now they're kind of in a class by themselves for me in this conference. I think that's a real mess right now. And it's going to be a year before Frost kind of gets it going in the right direction.
Yeah, it's interesting. Kelley seemed a lot higher when we talked with him in the previous segment about UCF this season and the way his numbers worked. And yet, I think most people who are going less off of metrics and more off of new coach vibes. I mean, the guy who was named the starting quarterback was, I think, like third or fourth on everyone's expectation of what the quarterback depth chart would actually look like. I mean, we have one named now, and so it's just. Man, it's a weird thing. Maybe UCF surprises us all. I'm still not super high on Arizona either, even with Noah Fafita back. My big question for the bottom.
You know what the comp is, Phillip? It's Colorado without Travis Hunter and Shador in 2023. Like that's what the team is. it's just like pile as much transfer into the roster as you can because you have to backfill, but you don't have the high-end talent that comes with Dion and the name star power that he can bring. And that Colorado team was bad, and they had a guy that won the Heisman Trophy the next year. So take that away, it could be bad. It could be pretty bad.
And take into account listening to some of the National College Football podcast, including Bud Elliott over on Cover 3, the transfer portal class this year is not as good as it was based off everyone's kind of view on it. And so in years past, and this might be something that we need to talk about in relation to Texas Tech, finishing one of the top 5 transfer portal classes this year is not the same as finishing with one of the top 5 transfer portal classes in years, the last few years when this has really started getting going. And so, I mean, all of that's going to kind of play out. And just because it's not as talented doesn't mean it's not going to benefit you. And Texas Tech's whole thing, as we've talked about, is it's less about trying to build a roster and more about adding depth of talent and adding more talent to an already talented roster for UCF's sake. And I think you could probably take this to Oklahoma State as well. Like if you're having to pull a ton of stuff out of the portal this year, may not have been the best year to have to try and build through the transfer portal as opposed to some years prior.
Yeah, and I think this is a wider conversation about the transfer portal that's not specific to the Big 12. But I think we're gonna see some slippage on what the transfer portal can be. There were a few years there where we had more talent in the NCAA ecosystem because of the trailing effect of the COVID extra eligibility and all of that. Most of that's now flushed through the system. I think we're going to see just less available in general. It's going to continue to be more common, I think, to add 65 players to your roster via the portal until something changes in terms of what's allowed and how it's regulated. That part's going to become more normalized, but I think the actual amount that you will be able to add, I suspect the mean level will go down.
I think that's fair. I didn't ask you about this beforehand, so I'm going to kind of pull this on you a little bit blind. Obviously, we will pick every non-FCS Big 12 game in week 1 coming up on our picks pod later this week. But numbers change between Sunday night at time of recording and Tuesday or Wednesday when we record. I'm curious if there are some lines, Big 12 and non-Big 12 as well, if you want, that you're looking at in week 1 right now that you're saying, hey, I really like this and I would put some money now where it is, or especially if there's somewhere you say, hey, this is one I would get now because it's going to change and this may be your best opportunity.
Totally off the top of my head, I could just give you sort of what I see looking at the board. I mentioned last week, I think sort of in passing, UCF, Jacksonville State. UCF's an 18-point favorite. I don't really know what to do with that number. I'm not recommending a position or anything. I just think it's interesting that UCF, with all that we've talked about, is still that big of a favorite because they're playing a Jacksonville State team that lost Rich Rod to West Virginia, and a lot of their best players either graduated or followed Rich Rod into the portal. So I think that's a really interesting number. I don't have a position in Cincinnati, Nebraska, but I have seen a lot of people talking about how we think Nebraska's going to be good this year. We think they're going to be vulnerable in week 1. So Cincinnati outright, I think, is sort of a sharp play. And that number's sitting at 6.5 there. So if the sharp position was on the Nebraska side, you would maybe expect that to have gone to 7, or to currently be at 7 is what I should say. So that's interesting. If you're a big believer in Baylor, which I know you are, which I am, I think you got to look at them outright in the money line market right now. They're like a 2.5 point dog at home to Auburn. I did some really great research this summer about road favorites crossing multiple time zones for a game is a really bad spot where you want to be fading the favorite and targeting the dog. There are 2 games like that in week 1. One of them is Boise State coming all the way east to play South Florida. I really liked the fade against Boise State last year in week 1 when they played Georgia Southern, sort of down in the sticky heat in late August in Statesboro. That was a cover with Georgia Southern, even though Boise State won and ultimately was a playoff team. This year, again, similar situation down in sticky Florida. I believe they're playing in Raymond James, where the Bucks play in the NFL. They're playing South Florida. South Florida, I got them at 9.5 weeks and weeks ago. I think they're down to 6.5 now. But still probably a decent buy point there. The reason I mentioned that stat, the other team besides Boise State that is a road favorite crossing multiple time zones is Georgia Tech going to Colorado. And Colorado's a home dog there. If you like that trend, then you would be betting Colorado +4. And that point spread has sort of steadily moved toward Colorado. So something to think about there as well. A lot of the other games are just FCS games, and you gotta be looking for what's the correct buy point here. How do you evaluate a market in an FBS team and an FCS team, and you kind of need specialized knowledge for that. TCU North Carolina, I think, is the other really interesting one, but I don't necessarily have a bet there because I have no idea how I'm supposed to handicap North Carolina sight unseen.
Yeah, that's gonna be an interesting game on Monday to wrap up the weekend. Yes, I do really like Baylor. There's another game on Saturday that a teaser I'm gonna be pretty high on as far as the Big 12 team goes. Chase, as always, it's a pleasure. We'll talk to you again later this week. As I mentioned, we're going to record on Tuesday with our guests to hit all the games because, of course, there are 4 Big 12 games on Thursday, 2 of which UCF Jacksonville State and Cincinnati, Nebraska, that we'll be making picks for. So we're going to get that one up a day early this week just to make sure everyone's got time to listen before those games start kicking off. So, Chase, as always, it's a pleasure. We'll talk to you again later this week, bud.
Yeah, talk in a few days. Thanks, Phillip.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
All right, let's talk about that slate of week 1 games. Thursday kicks everything off. I'll run through these in chronological order. UCF hosting Jacksonville State on Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Time, God's time. ESPN Plus for that one, as Chase mentioned, UCF an 18-point favorite. 6:30 ESPN Plus. Oklahoma State opening their season with their brand new coaching staff against FCS UT Martin. We won't pick this one, but Oklahoma State's a 23.5-point favorite. I'm not sure I might fade OSU in that one if I was going to put real money down, which you can play with fake money on Battle Bets. Link in the show notes. Come join us. It's going to be fun. 7 o'clock Central Time on ESPN Plus as well. Houston opening the season against FCS Stephen F. Austin. It's another one that we found really interesting when we did our Big 12 FCS preview with Sam Herder. If you haven't checked that pod out, it's the same episode as our Ryan Nani interview. Absolutely fantastic episode. If you haven't listened yet, go back and find it. I think it's just a couple episodes ago. And the Big 12 slate will wrap on Thursday with Cincinnati versus Nebraska, 8 p.m. kickoff on ESPN. Very excited for that one. That one should be fun. On Friday, we get Kansas versus Wagner on ESPN Plus at 6:30. Baylor hosting Auburn on Fox, 7 p.m. kickoff. And Colorado hosting Georgia Tech at 7 p.m. on ESPN. So we got a Big 12 battle there. So if you've got an option or an ability to split screen or have two different things in which ways to watch, I would advise doing so. I'm very excited for both of those games. I am very high on Baylor heading into the season. I cannot wait to see what they look like. This Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter and a lot of other players, Colorado team against a Georgia Tech team that people are kind of high on. I am really intrigued by this game and what this. I feel like Colorado's either going to eck out a slim win or get just absolutely blasted by Georgia Tech. I don't know. There's another option, but we shall see. Then Saturday. Got a full slate of games. 1 p.m. kickoff on ESPN Plus. West Virginia begins the second Rich Rod era against Robert Morris of FCS. Iowa State looking to start the season 2-0 at 2:30 on Fox, like the main Fox channel against FCS South Dakota. That is an interesting game. At 6 p.m. So you have a 1 o'clock and a 2:30. So pretty easy to watch either of those games. At 6 o'clock, here's where the slate gets busy. On ESPN Plus, Kansas State hosting North Dakota. Kansas State looking to rebound after their loss to Iowa State. North Dakota is a good FCS team. I'll leave it at that. Texas Tech opening their season on ESPN Plus at 6:30 p.m. against Arkansas Pine Bluff. There's not even a line on that game. That's all you need to know. BYU. We're going to start the Bear Bachmeier era at BYU against Portland State at 7 o'clock on ESPN Plus. BYU is a 43.5 point favorite. Yeah, yes. The FCS games continue. Arizona State hosting Northern Arizona at 9 p.m. Central Time on ESPN Plus. Then we've got two interesting ones. Arizona hosting Hawaii, a Hawaii team who is 1-0 after beating Stanford at 9:30 p.m. God's time on TNT or HBO Max, whichever way you want to go. It's our first Big 12 TNT broadcast. I am interested to see the broadcast more than the game, but I'm certainly interested in the game. But I'm definitely interested to see this TNT college football broadcast and how they handle the Big 12. And then the late game is a 10 p.m. kickoff on Fox. Utah at UCLA. Very interested in this game and what Utah looks like. I think the vibes at UCLA are all that impressive heading into to the start of the season. So that is one to keep an eye on. And then, of course, the weekend ends on Monday night, 7 p.m. ESPN and ESPNU simulcast TCU at North Carolina. TCU with just these incredible starts to the season. 2 years ago, it was getting upset by Colorado in Coach Prime's first game. Now they've got to go to North Carolina to face Bill Belichick's led North Carolina team. I mean, is it the most impressive set of games to open a season? No. It's a lot better than last year's was, but it's a nice slate. We got a great week 0 slate. We got Farmogeddon in week 0 to kick things off. Kansas with an impressive win. Now we've got games including Cincinnati, Nebraska, Auburn, Baylor, Colorado, Georgia Tech, Utah, UCLA. And then TCU, North Carolina. It's a good week 0 slate. There's a lot of FCS games, as there typically are, but I like this. You have 16 teams in the conference that I'm getting at least 1 or 2 enjoyable games. I wish that Baylor, Auburn, and Colorado, Georgia Tech weren't both on Friday at the exact same time. I hate that 3 of the P4 versus P4 games are on Thursday and Friday. I wish we got a little bit more on Saturday. But look, you're going to have plenty of eyeballs on Cincinnati, Nebraska, Baylor, Auburn, and Colorado, Georgia Tech. Combine that with what you got from week 0, with Farmogeddon being the very first game of the season all by itself, Kansas, Fresno State kind of being a game by itself. You're getting some really good opportunities for the Big 12 to showcase itself. Farmogeddon did a great job. Kansas did what it needed to do. 3 big opportunities to start the season before we even get to Saturday for Cincinnati, Baylor, and Colorado. Y'all, the season's here. I know I don't have to tell you twice about that. I'm excited. I'm thrilled. I cannot wait for the day. I'm already figuring out, like, okay, let me make more plans. What am I going to do? Which TV's going to be set up? Am I outside, inside? I have every single TV on different games. I'm thrilled. I know you are too. I'm loving the way this show is going to go with this new format. So thank you to everyone who listened. Do us a favor, make sure and leave us a rating and review. 5 stars would be great. If you would leave us a review as well, I'd love to read it on the show. It really does help this show out. So if you've never done it before, I would really encourage you to do it. It takes a couple minutes. Don't forget that link in the show notes, Battle Bets. We will have bets that lines up for week 1. It's okay if you miss week 1 and want to join in week 2. That's okay. Hop on in. Whoever's got the best record at the end of the season, we're going to have a great prize for you. What is that? I don't know yet. I'll tell you when we get closer to it. But I do want to do weekly prizes. And so we've got some koozies. We've got some stickers, some 1012 merch. I'd love to hand some of that stuff out. Maybe some other things, depending upon how some conversations go with some different stuff this week and next. So thank you so much. We'll talk to you again on Wednesday.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by FX's Alien Earth, the official podcast. Each week, host Adam Rogers is joined by guests, including the show's creator, cast, and crew, in this exclusive companion podcast. They will explore story elements, deep dive into character motivations, and offer an episode-by-episode behind-the-scenes breakdown of each terrifying chapter in this new series. Search FX's Alien Earth wherever you listen to podcasts.